Good evening. This is George from George's Family Matters. It is Tuesday, December 6th. Tonight, nothing's going to go wrong like it did yesterday. Good evening. This is George from George's Family Matters. It is Tuesday, December 6th. Tonight, nothing's going to go wrong like it did yesterday. Good evening. This is George from George's Family Matters. It is. Okay. Speaking of nothing going wrong, um, we're going to prevent anything from going wrong any further than that. We're getting some feedback. I'm not sure if everybody else heard that, but I certainly did. Last night didn't go so smooth. Today we're planning much smoother, although that kind of just said things a little bit differently. Last night we had Susan Mitchell Collin from Dismantled, bringing the book Dismantled, and I just wanted to point something out to everyone. This is our website that you see online right now. And I said that I didn't read the book because it was too upsetting, but I just want to point out right over here the first 30 pages. I did read this, and I'd like everybody to just take time when you can to read those first 30 pages. They're very interested. And right down here, this button, if you press it, that'll bring a link of photos of the homes that we lived in. And the reason for that is I just wanted people to get an idea of the setting for everything because of some of the allegations that were made. And I just wanted to clarify that because Susan asked me to do that. This coming Friday is going to be a very interesting Friday. All Fridays are going to be fun on George's Family Matters because fun is part of being a family. We're going to have my mom on the show, special guest appearance with her. We're going to have a very special location that we're going to be filming from. So that's going to be a lot of fun as well. You really don't want to miss that. And we're going to take on the biggest American debate that's happening right now in dividing families across the country. That's going to be on Friday, and believe me, you don't want to miss the Friday show. Later in this show, we're going to talk about how to find peace in your life. We have one very good way, and also we're going to talk about what happens when you're vulnerable. Tonight's show is Relational Trauma with Laurie Landry, Childhood Trauma into Adulthood. Our guest tonight is Laurie Landry, licensed marriage and family therapist and attachment specialist. Laurie, hi, how are you?
I'm good, George. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good, thank you. Welcome to the show. I'm glad that you're here. I'm glad that you were willing to be a guest here. Laurie, I wanted to just start, let's just start with a question. And the one that comes to my mind first is since our topic is trauma and relational trauma and trauma, childhood trauma into adulthood, when can trauma first begin in a child's life?
I think that trauma can begin as early as conception. It can happen in utero as a fetus grows. I think it takes about 16 weeks for a fetus to be able to have actual feelings and to be able to feel the effects of all kinds of different traumas, external traumas, environmental traumas, things that are happening in the home or with the body of the mother. So it can happen in utero, actually, very early on.
And is that something, when you say in utero, are you saying that, like, what age of the fetus can that start to happen?
I'm not sure the exact age. That's debatable. There's a lot of research to go, but to say any age or at conception. But I believe my thinking is that about 16 weeks is when a fetus actually starts to feel. That's my understanding. So I would say that that's probably a good time to guess anyway. But that question is debatable.
And Lori, are all attachment disorders, first of all, what are attachment disorders? What would be, for the person that's never heard of them, how would you describe an attachment disorder?
Oh, it's the inability to give and receive reciprocal love from a caregiver or to a caregiver. It starts off in early childhood when there's not a reciprocal relationship or when there's something that prevents a reciprocal relationship from happening. So an attachment disorder is a condition that develops in a person after there's been a break in the most often child-parent relationship, any kind of break. It could be there's children who are hospitalized at birth for a multitude of reasons and live in a hospital, and they can develop attachment disorders only because they don't have the one-on-one daily interaction with their primary caregiver, i.e., parent, for sometimes many months when they're sick. So if they have several caregivers, doctors, nurses, hospital staff, then they don't develop um, a strong relationship or bond with just one person or two, mother, father, whatever, two parents, whatever the household is or whatever the caregiving situation is.
Part of my understanding that it can be even simple as something as simple as a child that needs more medical care and stays in the hospital longer than the parent goes home without the child. Um,
Hmm.
is that accurate?
That is true. Yes, in my practice, I've seen several kids over the years that are now being raised and are parented by their biological families and have never not been parented by their biological families. But because of illness, they do stay in the hospital for long periods of time, in which case their parents can't be the one-on-one daily caregiver. And when they have a multitude of caregivers, it's almost like simulating an orphanage-style caregiver, where there's many people taking care of a child, which is confusing to a baby's brain.
And when attachment issues happen, are they all healable? Are they all things that they can recover from? Do some kids not recover? Are they not repairable if they're too severe?
Well, it's like any other trauma. So if you are in a plane crash or you're on a plane that crashes and there's 30 people on the plane and everybody survives, there's going to be 30 different ways, 30 different people that are going to be handling that trauma in 30 different ways. So it's absolutely well, it's difficult to predict what brain is going to be able to heal from trauma and what brains are not. So you can have kids from the same orphanage at the same time who manage the trauma of orphanage living, who do quite fine in life, and they're they make peace with their trauma, or they make peace with the situation. They move on to live healthy, productive lives. Others, their brains don't manage the trauma well, and they don't go on to live lives that are healthy. Same as a plane crash. There could be people that walk off the plane or get off from the plane crash and they go on the next plane out, and then there's people that will never get on a plane ever again. So it's all very different,
Hmm.
and there's no forecasting what a brain's going to do.
Now, I just want to interrupt for 1 second, Lori. I put a phone number up online, and the viewers can see it. And that's the phone number to call in to ask questions. We're going to come to questions at about 7:15. We're going to skip commercials, Lori. Nobody likes commercials anyways, but yesterday was a little bit disastrous. So today we're just going to skip commercials as well, just to make things go a little bit easier, to make sure that technically we have everything down. Um,
Hmm.
now, how
So that means I don't get a break.
well, no, you do get a break.
So there's no commercials, so I don't get a break.
You can take a yawn or something like that. You can't go far away though. You have to stay close by.
Okay. Okay.
But that's okay. I think that you can take a half hour and be able to handle that a little bit. Um,
Your breaks are important, George.
they are. And, you know, people's attention spans sometimes these days are a little bit short, as we all come to realize in this world. So maybe the commercial breaks are a good chance for people to just kind of recharge those batteries a little bit. Now, Lori, what are the symptoms of an attachment issue? How would a parent know that they're having attachment issues? Because to me, and I have experience in this unfortunately, but to me, a lot of parents don't even see it because something as simple as your child being in the hospital a little bit longer, or my understanding too that the child is sick when they're young. The parent might not even recognize that the child's going through torment, and that can cause problems because they feel their needs are not being taken care of. But as the child is growing developmentally, when do they start to see these kind of problems? What should the parent look
Oh,
for?
I think you can see it in little babies. So if you have a baby, um, So I think around 8 months, a baby is really looking for their parents at all times. They will go sit with other people as long as they can look at their parents and hear their parents' voice and see their parents. When they're a little bit earlier, babies are pretty happy to snuggle down in a lot of people's laps, but as they get to be 8 months old, they're really looking for their parent, and oftentimes only the parent can soothe them. But you're going, early as that, you want to be looking for eye contact. Really early babies, you want to be looking for
What do you
their
mean
eyes
by eye
following the parent.
contact? Okay.
Well, when the baby's really little, 2, 3, 4 months, and they start seeing and recognizing voice and smell and so forth, and their senses are really identifying their caregiver, they're going to, if the mom or dad walks in the room and starts to speak, the baby's eyes are going to follow that voice and follow follow the sound, the smell of the caregiver. They're going to prefer to look for the caregiver to any other voice or smell in the room. And if your baby doesn't do that, you could be looking at a problem. Maybe not, but that's one of the telltale signs early on is the eyes. Are the eyes looking for the parent, recognizing the parent? Again, their voice, their smell, when the parent walks in the room, you can obviously see the change in the baby's demeanor. So if the baby's in distress and then they hear their mother's voice or see the mom, they usually calm down in a healthy baby.
And for a parent that starts to see these kind of things, what should they be doing?
Spending more time with the baby in the lap, looking in the eyes of the baby while feeding. That's a really important thing. When you're either breastfeeding or giving a baby a bottle, you should be engaging the baby with eye contact, stimulation on the cheek, or, that's where Gucci Gucci Goo comes from, where parents tickle the baby's chin and get the baby's attention and they laugh. So whenever you have a baby and you're feeding, breast milk is very sweet. And so when you have a baby taking in a sweet and laughing and looking in the parent's eyes, that's stimulating attachment. So when you have a child that is not breastfeeding and, perhaps is adopted, you can simulate the breastfeeding experience by giving them a lollipop, not a tiny baby, but a young kid. You can simulate the attachment process with giving them a lollipop or a sweet while interacting with them on your lap and they're looking in your eyes.
So
that's how you can. Hmm?
Oh, I'm sorry, go
I'm
on.
sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I wanted to ask, so are there certain things that parents should do? I mean, I think that parents naturally want to hold their babies, naturally want to do some things with the baby. Are there things that we should be doing
Mm-hmm.
that maybe parents aren't aware of?
I think for most parents, that you're right, that the attachment process comes very naturally. Most parents will put their babies, when they're coddling them or rubbing their back or making them feel better, comforting them, they'll put them on their left side of their chest, even when they're left-handed. They'll put the baby's chest next to their chest. And what happens then is that the baby's heart and the caregiver's heart are beating next to each other, skin-to-skin contact. And the moms or dads, and I say mom meaning mom and dad, or caregiver, that caregiver is actually regulating the baby's heart, so bringing down anxiety. So if baby's in distress, you pick up the baby, put him on your chest, rub its back, have the baby put their face in your neck and smell your smell, and anxiety gets reduced and distress level is reduced. So the caregiver's heart actually regulates the baby's heart and comes back to a calm state.
And
that's if the caregiver is calm.
Mm-hmm. So it's important that the caregiver is calm as well.
Yes, which is difficult at times because when your baby's in distress, more than likely you're in some distress too.
So is it fair to say that the parent's energy level and the way that they are with the baby at an early age really makes a big difference?
I think it's fair to say that it really makes a difference when you have parents and children that are healthy attached, that it's always the case that parents' mood and regulated state or not regulated state has an effect on the child.
Okay.
At any age.
And in the case where there's a disruption in the parent-child bonding, the attachment, um, at any age, but let's pick the age of 3. How does the baby or the toddler at the age of 3, how do they interpret that?
As a trauma. So if you have a child who's living with a parent and the parent dies, they experience not the death, but they experience their loss in terms of the safety. It's a big safety issue. Attachment is really a lot about safety. So if the person who's been taking care of you and provides all the safety and the food and all your needs goes away, then and you have that person replaced with somebody else, it's maybe to be able to trust that the next caregiver is going to do the same thing. Which
Hmm.
is why with every time a child is placed with a different caregiver, it gets more and more difficult for that baby to trust.
Laurie, with that, I'm going to come back to that, to the trust. Um, we're not going to take a commercial, but what I am going to do is a little bit of a commercial. So if you need to get a glass of water or something like that, you have like less than 30 seconds. I just want to give out our phone number. It's 202-999 4699. If there's any callers out there with any kind of questions that are related to relational trauma, childhood trauma into adulthood, and we're going to get into the adulthood part as well. Um, Call that number. It's up on the screen. We'll take callers starting anytime they come in. And also on the left side of the screen, which you can't see, Lori, are the resources that George's Family Matters offers. Now, I said no commercials. Call this what you want. It's a commercial about what we offer. These are the things that George's Family Matters offers. We have a bunch of community helpers that help out with these kinds of things, volunteers like yourself, Lori, for coming on to the show, that'll help people get these things. Now, if there's something you need that's not on our website, we're going to help you with that. There's no charge to people when they need our help. You can call, you can email, whatever is most convenient for you. But it is important for people to have resources because a lot of times some of these things people don't even understand what's going on with their children, like in the situation of attachment. Now, with the trust, once a child is being moved around from home to home on a regular basis, I imagine it gets very hard for them to, to be able to trust. What goes, it's not a conscious decision, but what happens with them? Do their brains change? Is it a thought process? Is it a physical change? What happens with them when that bond starts to break?
I think all of the above happens. Every caregiver is different. Even good, wonderful caregivers do things different. Their patterns are different. Timing's different. Smells are different. Everything's different. So a baby has to readjust to different patterns and different lifestyle. And so, for bedtime, for example, so if a baby is living with one set of parents and nighttime rituals are one way, they eat, then they have a bath, then they have a story, then they go to bed, then they go to another home, and maybe they have a bath before they eat, or which I guess doesn't make so much sense, but I guess everybody's different. So, when the patterns change, the body doesn't know what to expect next. And so the baby has to readjust to the patterns of the family. So it's difficult. And I'm not sure what the conscious brain thinks, or I don't know that there's any conscious thought about that, but I know that there's feelings attached to that, and mostly scared. When you don't know what's going to happen next, it's a scary proposition for kids.
And let's talk about the physical changes that happen. I believe, now I'm not, an expert on this, but I believe that there's actual physical changes in the human brain that start to occur when they do, I'm not even sure what the tests are, but that there are different differences in the brain scans of a child that had early trauma and a child that had not. Um, can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. In when you have a child, say 3 years old, and if you look at the brain of a child who was, say, raised in an orphanage with not a lot to eat, not regular nourishment, not a lot of skin contact, not a lot of reciprocal interactions with one caregiver, then that child goes into primal instinct mode. I'm sorry, of survival. So that brain is going to develop the brain stem, which is, I think, responsible for the survival instincts. And so a child who is experiencing early trauma, environmental trauma, is going to have that part of their brain developed much uh, deeper than the other parts of the brain that come after, like the rational and emotional thinking and the frontal lobes of the brain. And so a child who's experiencing trauma is going to be wired for survival as opposed to being wired uh, and developing in a rational and emotional way, if that makes sense.
It does. And as you know, we've spoke about it. I've had adopted children that did in fact have issues going on, and it's actually very hard and very sad to see what happens with them because that um, did you call it primal mode where they go for the survival mode? It's kind of
Mm-hmm.
like they block everybody out. They'll chew your face. They'll show you that they need you because they do. They're children. They need adults to take care of them. So they do need
Mm-hmm.
that, but at the same time, it's almost like they believe that they have to do it on their own. And I know that the crying baby, I don't know if that's the right word to use, but that crying baby that is crying for the mother, they cry, they cry. Nobody comes. And when I say mother, same thing as you, caregiver. When nobody comes, the baby eventually gets into a point where they stop crying and they start moaning. And what happens at that point in their brain, or what happens with their thought process when they go into that? Because I think that's the beginning of the survival mode.
Well, that's the beginning of cause and effect thinking. So when you are a baby and you cry, and caregivers, it doesn't take a long time for a caregiver to figure out what kind of cry means what. So if your baby's in the crib crying, you can tell which kind of cry: a hungry cry, a lonely cry, a wet cry, I need a diaper change cry. So babies start to communicate their different needs through their crying. And if you're a baby and you're crying for food and you're hungry, well, the caregiver is going to come and feed you over and over and over again. If you're a baby and you're crying because you're lonely, the caregiver is going to come and get you and pick you up and hold you and keep you company, and that happens over and over and over again. But if you are, say, living with a parent or caregiver who's not doing that consistently, and so it happens often with babies who live with people who have substance abuse and drug addiction problems. So sometimes the parent is on and is able to take care of the needs of the baby when they can and when they're able. And then there's other times when the parent is not able to and the baby just cries and cries and cries. So what happens to the baby's brain is, okay, sometimes I can cry when I'm hungry and I get fed, and other times I get hungry or I cry when I'm hungry and I don't get fed. So then the cause and effect thinking doesn't develop in a healthy way because there's no direct line from cause and effect. It doesn't happen consistently enough to let the brain develop cause and effect thinking. So then cause and effect thinking is weak sometimes, through childhood. So if I do this, this will happen. Doesn't always become uh, a pattern in the brain that's always consistent. So cause and effect thinking is weak, and that's not in terms of navigating life. If you have poor cause and effect thinking, then you can't understand. If I do this, then this will happen.
Hmm. Now, is this something that is more prevalent in the foster adoption world, or is it equal across um, a baby that's born into family, stays with the family? How does that affect a baby?
I don't think um, foster care or adoption is a predicator, if you will, for cause and effect thinking. It's the quality and consistency of the care, and that can happen. Good, consistent care can happen in a foster home, and consistent care can happen in an adoptive home, and consistent care can happen in a home where two biological parents are raising their child. So it doesn't. I think it's more common when you have kids who have multiple placements.
So multiple placements is a problem.
And trauma is a problem.
Hmm.
And trauma happens in all kinds of families.
Now, my question about is it more prevalent in the foster and adoption world, it really comes to this in my mind. And I see what you're saying. If there's consistency in the foster care, if they're taken from the birth mother, put into an adoptive home, and they're given good care, it's going to be much easier to have that transition. But when it's multiple times and just keeps happening and happening, it becomes more difficult for the child because um, they go into that survival mode where they don't depend on people if it's poor care. Um,
Hmm.
so foster care can, in fact, cause that if they're going from one um, poor quality home to another. And I hate to use poor quality. I don't know what the right word is. Maybe you can help me with that. But when they move them consistently on a regular basis from foster home, and they're not the greatest, and it becomes machine-like, um, that's more likely to cause problems, especially if there's trauma within that home, correct?
Yes, but understand that multiple placements is traumatic,
It is.
even when the quality of care is really good,
Okay.
because because a baby's brain or a child's brain has to get used to different people. And once they start to rely and trust that this one person is going to take care of them and keep them close and protect them, and then that person leaves, that's a trauma, no matter what kind of situation the baby's going into.
Mm-hmm. I imagine it's very difficult when a baby goes from home to home. I myself, for this past year, for various reasons, have had to live with different people, live in different homes. And I have to tell you, as an adult, it was very hard for me, very, very hard, to actually go into somebody's home. Their life is ongoing, and you wear out your welcome soon. But people have their lives, and the person themselves, being me, you feel a little bit uncomfortable. You feel like you're intruding. You feel like you really don't belong. So I imagine for a child,
Hmm.
that much must be amplified because they don't even understand what's going on.
I'm sure that's true.
And I
Yes,
want
I'm sure. Go
Uh,
ahead.
I'm going to point out something. I just put something on the screen. These are the resources offered by George's Family Matters. And the second thing on the list is adoption foster care issues. And the reason why I put that up there is I just want to point out to people that foster care does have, at times, inherent issues that go along with it. We do work with people on that to help them identify and find sources. And if you start to realize that your child does have attachment issues, whether it's foster child, a child that you're adopting, even a child that's in the birth family, how does somebody find a qualified, knowledgeable, competent therapist? How do they go about that? Because
Well, I know in the
let
state
me
of
just throw
Connecticut.
one more thing in there. One more
Sure.
thing. I know from my personal experience, not all therapists are attachment therapists. Some will even say that they do attachment work, and what they're really doing is play therapy, which is very different. And it's a shame when you get a therapist that'll take a child because they need business and not tell you, hey, you know what? This isn't my specialty. This isn't something I can help you with. So it's really up to the parent to really have a huge burden to find that specialist. Just like if I have a heart problem and I go to a foot doctor, they're going to look at my foot and say, your feet look fine. They're not going to maybe know what to do with the heart. They know enough, hopefully, to send you along to the right person. And that's what your physician does. But in the world of therapy and psychiatric care, I've found that therapists sometimes take on cases that they shouldn't. So it is a big burden for the parent to find that person. So you're saying in the state of Connecticut?
I think the state of Connecticut in recent years has done a really good job at finding and training adoption competent therapists. Um, there's a program that I went to. I think I was the first class. Gosh, that was years ago, maybe 12, 13 years ago, where I think it was a 9-month class where we met every month and just went over best practices for adoption services and adoption work. And as far as I know, that is still going on. The state of Connecticut also has the adoption assistance program out of Yukon, and the people that run that program they run like a triage service for adoptive parents, and you can call in, and they have a list of adoption competent therapists that um, that they recommend. So in the state of Connecticut, there are resources. I'm not sure that parents always know that there are resources, and that might be a problem. Um, but I know that the state of Connecticut is trying to provide folks with the right kind of care and the right treatment. So I can't speak to any other states, but I do know that there's been a lot of families that have struggled in finding the right therapist. But I should say that most of the therapists that I know, they are people that go into this field because they want to help people and they want to help families. And so I think that the that the goal is a good goal, and I think it's for the most part, most therapists are really wanting to help families, and maybe they do take cases thinking that they can be helpful. Um, so I think that their agenda is in the right place. So I will say that.
Well, being from Connecticut, I happen to be very familiar with, and I don't remember her name. Is it Allison at UConn? And
Allison Powell, yep,
wonderful woman. She directed
great.
me to excellent resources. But I think sometimes parents wait until it's too late. So, what is the right time that you start getting your child some help if you see anything going on? Because the
As early as you can, I think.
as early as you can. What happens if you don't? Because we're talking about childhood trauma into adulthood. So, what happens on the flip side if you ignore things or you don't get the right kind of treatment? What happens as an
Well,
adult?
again, it depends on the person. There's many brains that make sense of their trauma and go on to live perfectly healthy lives. There's a lot of adopted people in the world that are happy and healthy and doing quite well. I think that adoption sometimes gets a bad rap, and um, and I think the statistics and studies say that more adopted people are in therapy, or adopted children are in therapy, and I think that's because more adoptive parents are, um, when adoptive parents notice something is not right with their child, they get them into therapy more more readily or quicker than parents who are raising their biological children. They know their histories and all their backgrounds, and they wait a little while longer. So I think it's true that adopted kids are in therapy more often, but I think it's just because their parents come from a different worldview of adoption, and sometimes, you know, um, if you're adopted, you might need more help in making sense of adoption. Um, but not all adopted people have attachment disorders. I think that has to be pointed out.
Mm-hmm. I would agree with that. I myself had adopted 9 children. Um, Three of which did have attachment issues. The rest did not. Maybe some of the younger ones might have. I'm not sure. I think that things come out as they go along. But I do realize as adults it can be a very troubling thing because that kind of brings it into their family, does it not?
Oh yeah, sure, sure. Whatever we carry as children, we bring into our adult life and our adult relationships. And if there's an attachment disorder in your history that is unresolved, then you're going to have attachment difficulties with your spouse or loved ones, or sometimes children.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Now, there's a lot of good resources out there. Again, um, we love to give out resources and not to give a plug to anybody, but I just have to point out in Massachusetts, there's a very good center for attachment, the tongue tied, Attachment Institute. Um, what are
the
the,
Attachment Institute of New England
thank you.
in Worcester, Mass.
um, what is effective treatment? What works for them and what does not? Because I know that there's some treatments that have been out there that don't work. Oh, and Lori, before you answer that, I want to give out our phone number again. It's 202 999-4699. And I also want to say there's not a single caller on there, so I'm kind of wondering if somebody just wants to give us a prank call even. I want to make sure our phone lines are working. Not that I can change it at this point, just to make sure that we're logged on correctly and stuff like that. Somebody just call and say hi. You can hang up after you say hi. Um, but I
Do
would
you want
like
me to have one of my kids call you, George?
yeah, have them call 202
Wait
999.
a minute. That would require me to get a pen.
Okay, and then I'll read it to you. And I guess this is your mental break from these heavy questions, and we'll come back to effective treatment in a second. In lieu of commercials, we'll get one of Laurie's kids to call
What's the
us.
number?
It's 202
Mm-hmm.
999 4699. With everything that went wrong yesterday and the beginning of today's show, which you didn't hear, Laurie, but it was, I believe we're getting a lot of feedback echoing. So who knows if the phones are even connected? My guess is they're not because I didn't even see any drop calls. I didn't see anything. So I'm just
Hold on one
kind of
second. Hold
guessing.
on one second.
Okay. While Lori goes to do that, I'm going to just real quick bring up on the screen again resources that we offer at George's Family Matters. We get into child and mental health issues, adoption foster care issues, professional resource referrals, um, discussion support talk show, which we're doing now. But we also have discussion and support groups for people if we think that there's people that maybe need to buddy up with another family. Public policies and laws will help you with childhood development issues,
This is me.
dealing with state agencies, adoption and foster care process,
Thank you.
specialized parenting techniques, family strengthening and building skills. These are all very important things that if you want a healthy family, you really need to address these things. And even if you're not sure if you have them, we don't mind talking to you. We like to talk to people. We've helped quite a few people with different things, and it's of no charge. We're probably going to refer you to somebody that's going to help you or at least give you some thoughts, maybe a self help book. We have lots of books on our site. The book that Susan Mitchell Collin talked about yesterday, Dismantled, which, let's see if I can bring up a picture of that real quick, um, which is here on our website. That's something else. It's a book about what happened to my family, but it's also a learning book. It's a book that will help you realize, hey, maybe I should be looking into things. Maybe I should be um, seeing some things here that are alarming to me. And instead of waiting for them to actually be a huge problem, take care of them early on. Oh, and look at that. We have a
George?
caller. Lori, we're going to bring a
Okay.
caller on.
Okay.
Hello, caller. Hello.
Caller, you have to speak.
Caller, can you talk into your phone for us?
Can you talk into the phone?
I don't think
Can you hear the caller?
I don't think so. Can you tell him to go in another room because I can hear him through your phone. Tell him to go
Okay.
into another room and
I'm moving into the other room. Now can you hear him?
um,
No, he's talking into the phone.
he is talking into the phone.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well then we do have a problem. And is he talking loud into the phone? Is his phone muted maybe?
Yeah, no, he's saying hello. Hello, George.
Okay. Tell him to keep saying that for a minute. And what I'm going to do, Lori, is I'm going to let
Mm-hmm.
you answer the question. Do you remember where we left off? Because now I'm going blank on that. We were talking about um,
You asked me about treatment.
treatments. If you can talk about
Oh,
that for a
don't hang
minute.
up.
Yeah, tell him to keep saying hello, George. And what I'm going to do is try to find him on here. And you talk about treatment, please.
Well, that's a long answer. I'll try to make it short. That there's different treatments that work better than others for different people for different reasons. So, there's a lot of really good people around the country that offer attachment work in all different models. The Attachment Institute has one model. Dan Hughes, who's a really well-known name in attachment theory. He does another model, and it depends on the family. It depends on the child. It depends on, what works for different people. So that's a hard question to answer in a short period of time. So I think a family, when they're looking for an attachment specialist, they should um, try out the model and see if it works for them, and then go from there. That's a really hard question because there's a lot of different things that work for different families in all kinds of areas.
Mm-hmm.
So
Lori, I'm going to
it
try
wasn't
the.
too specific.
Okay, I'm going to try to bring on another caller
Okay.
that just gave up. So, okay, we're not going to be able to
Oh,
talk to that caller. Let's try calling them back because sometimes we delete a call by accident. So, I think we're still really having problems with our electronics here, but we'll see. Caller,
are
can
you
you hear
there?
me?
Oh,
Hello?
I can hear you.
Oh, okay. I don't think our caller hears me.
Okay.
Okay, well,
Was that another caller besides my son?
um, who knows at this point because I think that I see a few phone numbers coming up. I think what we're going to do is kind of forget the calling for tonight along with commercials, Lori. I guess this is the beauty of a live talk show is who knows what we're going to come into. What I'd like to do is before we get back to our conversation, what I'd like to get into is just to say in a couple of minutes that we're going to talk about finding peace. We're also going to find out about the dangers of vulnerability, um, and that we're going to talk about in a couple of minutes. So we'll take a couple more minutes just to talk about treatment because as adults, is there still hope for treatment if you have attachment disorder? Is that going to, or attachment issues, is that going to show in your relationship with your children?
Um, I think so. Yes, I think that if you don't learn how to trust a relationship and how to be vulnerable in a relationship, it's really difficult to be a parent because being a parent is the most vulnerable thing I think human beings have or experience their whole lives. Because once you have children, their whole lives become your whole life, and so not only are you vulnerable to your own world in your own life, but you're vulnerable to theirs. So, meaning when your children have, break a leg, you can feel their pain. When their heart is broken, your heart is broken. Um, and so, the vulnerability grows when you become a parent. And if you are unable to attach and connect with somebody else's heart, then it's difficult, I think, to parent when you can't be comfortable in that vulnerable position.
And Lori, I'm going to get back to a question that I asked earlier. The healing.
And I didn't answer it.
No, you did, but I want to talk about it more as an adult. The healing and the repair process. And I say this because one of my children did heal almost at adulthood.
Hmm.
And it was amazing to see the changes in him. But again, it was not as a young child that he was healing. It was as an adult, a young adult that he was healing. Is that typical? Is it difficult if you have attachment issues to heal?
And none of this is typical. For every different person, there's a whole different set of circumstances, a whole different pathway to healing or not healing, a whole different set of vulnerabilities, a whole different way of navigating the world. What makes this so difficult to provide treatment or to give help is that everybody's at a different place. And so I can't speak about. It's really difficult to speak about this topic in generalities because there are none. There's no. I can say what happens often. I can say, but that's not always. There's no black and white in this issue at all.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Lori, I'm
So
going to.
it's even. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. It's even what?
It's just it's difficult to predict.
Mm-hmm.
what will happen in somebody's life. But I have known adults and have seen them in my practice who have worked really hard at learning how to trust relationship and learning how to trust themselves
Okay.
in a relationship.
Laurie, I'm going to try one more time. There's a couple of new callers. I'm going to try to take them. Um,
Okay.
Caller, can you hear me? Hello? Okay, we're going to move to the next one. Caller, can you hear me? Hello? Okay, we definitely have problems with the phones today, so we're taking the phone number down so we don't stress out over that. Um, on Friday, it's a review of the week, and we talk about whatever went on during the week. So if people do want to talk about the relational trauma and childhood trauma, I'd be happy to take those calls on Friday. Laurie will be back on Thursday as well. Um, so we'll have a second chance to go over that a little bit. Later in this week, we're going to have on Wednesday tomorrow Foster Adoption 101 with Carolyn Goodridge, the basic ABCs. We're going to have on Thursday my son, Child of the System with Carlos Herraz, foster child to adoptee to adult, and now father to be, along with Laurie Landry. And on Friday, that's the week in review, where we're going to talk about what matters to your family, what's on your mind. That's where we're going to be on location. That's going to be a very fun show. I'd like to turn now, Laurie, to a quote that you like. And this talks about the vulnerability. What happens when we are vulnerable? And the quote that you liked was when we are the most vulnerable, we tend to fall in love with someone who is the most available. What does that mean to you?
Well, and I have to say, I would love to give credit. I don't know where I got that quote. I don't know if I read it or somebody said it to me, but I know I picked it up along the way in my travels, and it's always stuck with me because it makes sense to me. Um, because I think that in adult relationships, I see over and over again that when 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 adults are vulnerable, and not in a healthy, vulnerable way, in sort of a needy, vulnerable way. They fall in love with the person who can meet those interpersonal needs in a way that is not always healthy. So, as adults, if you are in a state of, I don't know, if you're having financial problems, you might find somebody who's available financially to you. If you are um, all kinds of ways, whatever way you might be vulnerable, it's more easy, I think, to fall in love with somebody who's more available in that way to you, that meets those needs. Sometimes it's healthy, and a lot of times, it's not so healthy.
This kind of falls a little bit into the rebound. Somebody that is
Hmm.
vulnerable with a broken heart, they would fall into this because whoever is willing to give them love and attention is possibly going to be the person that they fall in love with. And the danger of
Yes,
that
and it's
is
a bit of a conundrum. Mm,
you might fall in love with the wrong person because maybe that person that's willing to do that for you is the very person that you should stay away from if you weren't so vulnerable.
Well, and you also might fall in love with them too fast
Mm-hmm.
and fall in love with somebody, the person that you think that they might be. So, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh no, go ahead.
I just think it's a conundrum because, in adult relationships, we want to meet somebody who, makes us feel good about ourselves and makes us feel, who recognizes our inner beauty and in all of us, and somebody who celebrates us in many ways. But I think that if we don't celebrate ourselves and that piece is left out there, we're going to take sort of anybody's celebration of us, and that will be good enough.
Mm-hmm. And Lori, the quote that I picked for tonight was forgive others, not because they deserve forgiveness, but because you deserve peace. And sometimes we don't get
Mm.
asked for forgiveness, and that's hard. Where someone does something that hurts us and they don't ask for forgiveness, but for ourselves to find peace, and that's what we talked about earlier. What happens, or I'm sorry, how to find peace in your life. It's hard to find peace, but sometimes it's from forgiving people that don't ask for forgiveness. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that when we forgive people, it's all about making ourselves healthier and making ourselves feel better. I think that when you don't forgive, you live in resentment. I also have a quote about resentment that I won't say because it's rather naughty. But
Naughty's
when
okay.
you
We're
hold on
not
to resentment,
regulated. We're not regulated by the
all right.
FCC or
So
anyone.
I'll say it. I'll say it. Resentment is like pissing on yourself. Nobody feels it but you.
Mm-hmm.
So 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 when you don't forgive somebody, you hold on to the resentment towards them, and most often that person is not going to bed feeling badly. Only you are. And so when being forgiving is giving up resentments for yourself, and when you are able to give up resentments, then you can find peace. It's really not about the other person. And so
Mm-hmm.
I often, when you bring this back to attachment, I often teach children how to repair relationships. And it's something I learned from the Attachment Institute, and I need to give them credit because they're all brilliant in Worcester. And what they taught me is how to teach children how to repair relationships. And they have this thing called the 5-part apology, where it teaches children how to apologize for hurting their parents' heart or breaking their parents' heart when they do things with lying, stealing, all the things that kids do that are hurtful to parents. And so the 5-part apology teaches them a formal way to repair a relationship. And in the apology, they say I'm sorry for, and they talk about what they actually did, and they become accountable for what they did, and they learn that they can fix a relationship. But the bigger, deeper thing that happens with kids when they're able to fix a relationship is then they feel better about themselves. They feel better about themselves when they're able to fix a relationship. I don't know about anybody else, but I know when I've hurt somebody, I want to fix it as fast as I can. I don't like living when I've hurt somebody and it's out there and it's not repaired. It's really not a good feeling for me, and I think a healthy brain understands that the faster you repair a relationship with somebody that you really care about, the better you feel. And so I try to get kids to understand and to feel the benefit of fixing a relationship, because in the end it makes them happier. And children by nature are born to want to please their parents. Particularly through the latency stage of life, which is like 11 or 12, kids really want to please their parents. That's what they're all about. And when they're not pleasing their parents, they naturally want to fix it. And when they fix it and all is well, they feel better. So apologies and forgiveness are really about the person that's delivering them. I think the other person appreciates it too, but I think the bigger picture is for the person who's giving the apology.
Laura, I'm glad you brought up the 5-part apology. I wasn't even going to mention that tonight because it wasn't on my mind. However, it is something that's on our website, buried in there somewhere in the resources, but it's something that I recommend to parents many, many times is the 5-part apology. Can we talk about what those 5 parts are? Because I taught that to my kids, and one of them in particular knows exactly how to use it, and probably should be using that in life. And it's an amazing tool because it really brings forgiveness. It allows um, for everyone to heal, including the person that did wrong to them. And excuse me while I fix my headset; it's the most uncomfortable one. But so it's good for the person that did what they did, and it's good for the parent to feel that the child wants the forgiveness and that they can give it. Because if they don't give it, and that's really what that quote's all about, is when somebody doesn't ask for forgiveness, you give it for your own peace, but when they ask for it, wow, that's a really powerful thing. So can we talk about the 5 steps of that?
Sure. The first part is I'm sorry, Mom, Dad, I'm sorry for. That's the first part. Then the second part is taking responsibility, naming what it is that they did, so that they are taking accountability for the action of what they did. Let's see, that's 2. Let's see, I'm sorry for whatever it is that they did. And then the message that it sent. So messages are really important. So when a child, steals gum from a mother's pocketbook, a child says, I'm sorry, Mom, I'm sorry for stealing gum from your pocketbook. It must have sent you the message that I don't care about your property, or
Mm-hmm.
sent you the message that I don't respect your privacy of what's in your bag, or whatever the message is. Um, and then they offer up what the Attachment Institute coined the term a fix. And a fix is something that a child does that repairs the relationship. So, along with the apology, so I use the analogy with kids all the time that if they're playing baseball in their front yard and their baseball smashes through the neighbor's window, the kid can't just run over and say, "Sorry, Mr. Jones, that I broke your window," and take their ball and leave. They also have to pay for the window.
Mm-hmm.
So when a child does something that hurts a parent's heart, they have to apologize for hurting their heart, but they also have to fix the heart. So they have to do something actively to make the parent, believe that their intentions are true and pure, right? So they offer up a fix. So I would like to fix it by, cleaning your car, or I would like to fix it by watching your favorite TV show with you. And a fix doesn't have to be a chore. It doesn't have to be. It's not a punishment. It doesn't have to be um, a labor, a, 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 an act of labor. It can be something, anything that would make a parent feel good.
And Lori, can I
Rubbing.
just
Mhm.
interrupt for 1 second? And shouldn't that fix sometimes be something that you do with them and maybe not even point out? I used to say to my kids, I don't mind playing checkers. It's not my favorite game. However, with my kids, I told them it was my favorite game because it would be something that I could do with them. And
Yes, the relationship-based fix is better, I
okay,
think, because it enhances attachment. So anything that you do on a relationship, in relationship, is a better fix. Because at the end of the day, people are happy. The happiest people, I think, are the ones that are happy in their relationships. And it doesn't have to be a mate relationship. It's relationships with their friends and their family and their children and their church and their spiritual relationship with, their religion. And so relationships are what makes people happy. It's not things. It's not a clean car. It's not a vacuum drug. It's not a walk dog. Well, a dog could be a relationship, so that's not a good example. But a relationship-based fix is much more um, is is a better fix, I think, because it teaches kids to get personal satisfaction just within relationship. So I just don't want to forget. So the child then offers up the fix and says, I would like to fix it by. So my kids, when they need to do a fix, my kids don't talk about fixes anymore. They just kind of do them. When they know they've hurt my heart in some way, they'll sit and watch the news with me at night and talk to me about politics because that's what I like. They don't particularly like it so much. Excuse me, but they'll do that for me and it makes me happy. And it's something that I can share with them and teach them, and so that's a relationship based fix. It's not a chore. It's not something that they're doing, to clean my house or clean the bathroom or whatever. It's just something that they do that makes me happy. And keep in mind too that when children have to have fixes on their brain, it makes them notice what's important to the people that they love. And that's a really basic 101 relationship skill. So when you're in a love relationship or any relationship in your adult life, it's really important to be able to notice what makes that other person happy.
mm-hmm. So,
So,
actually, getting to the topic of the day, that even helps with fixing trauma, fixing attachment, because you're fixing the attachment, you're repairing it, and go on with the steps because we only have about a minute left. Well, a minute for
the last
you.
step is oh, I'll finally get my break,
You'll
George.
get your break.
Yeah. So the fifth step is offering up the offering up the apology, the message, offering up a fix, and saying I'd like to fix it by, and then checking in with the parent and saying, would that work for you? So if the child decides to watch a TV show with the parent, I would like to watch your favorite TV show on Tuesday at 8 o'clock with you, and I'll make you popcorn, and we'll have popcorn or whatever. So they offer up the fix, and then they say, will that work for you? And then the parent can say, yes or no. And
Now,
most,
is it
and I
okay
think
for
with
the
most,
parent to
yeah.
say no if they feel that, it doesn't work for them?
Yes, because if a child has offered up the same fix for every single um, for every single thing that they've had to fix in the last month, and it's the same fix over and over, the parent might say, that might not work for me this time. Let's think of something different.
Well, Laurie, thank you for going over that with us. This has been Laurie Landry speaking on relational trauma, childhood trauma into adulthood. Um, Tomorrow we're going to have Carolyn Goodridge with Foster Adoption 101, the basic ABCs. Laurie, thank you for being with us. Have a good night. And
Do
to
you want me to just hang up now, George?
You can hang
Can I
up
just
now,
hang up now?
Laurie. You can. And thank you for joining us, Laurie. Thank you very much. And to everyone else, good night. And thank you for being with us tonight. I hope that you got something out of it. I really do. And if you need any help from us, please call anytime. Thank you.